This is questions to ask at the end of the interview. So what this is usually the vast majority of job interviews that you go to, they are going to be asking you towards the end. They'll say, do you have any questions for us? Right? And it is bad to say no, and it is bad to sit there like an idiot going, let's see, right? You come across like you're unprepared. You come across like because you couldn't even take the trouble to think that far in advance or wonder anything about this employer or this job. You come across like this job is not important to you, and that really counts against you in the running. Okay, so you want to have questions ready to roll when they ask you this. Whether or not they prompt you for it, they're still good to ask, right? So even if they don't prompt you and say, do you have any questions? As you're winding down the interview, it's good to start asking them a couple of questions anyway. Okay. Now, I'm going to give you some examples here of stuff you could ask. All of these are, it's open season on whichever one of these you want to pick out. But you could ask them about expectations for the role. So you'd say, if I was in this role, what would be your expectations for me within the first 30 days, 60 days, and 90 days, right? So you can have an idea of how the onboarding is going to go and how quickly you're going to have to get over the learning curve, okay? That's an intelligent question. They will like that you ask that question because it shows that you're thinking ahead. It helps them imagine you in the role, right? And it shows that you're tuned in to what's going to be expected of you, okay? Another good question is to say, how has this position become available, right? Maybe somebody retired, right, and they're replacing them, or maybe they are creating a new position. So this is a first-time role, in which case you'd want to maybe get the background on that. Why are you creating this position? Is it some manager's pet project, or are they growing or expanding, right? That would be useful to know. You could also say, what's the biggest challenge, right? The challenge question. So you could say, what's the biggest challenge as you see it for the person that's going to be in this role, right? Or you could vary it. Say, what's the biggest challenge that this industry is facing right now, in your opinion? Or what's the biggest challenge that this company is facing in the next year or two, as you see it? Something like that. Those are all interesting questions. They are thought-provoking questions. It gets these people talking. They talk about the role, they talk about what's expected, and you learn a bit more about the role when they start going off on this stuff. And if they should mention, oh yeah, I think the biggest challenge is going to be AI, blah, 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 and you haven't mentioned AI in the interview or something, and they're talking all about it and saying it's super important for this role in this company, that gives you a chance then to say, actually, I know quite a bit about AI or, whatever, and speak to these things, right? So you get some extra points right at the end. If maybe you hadn't mentioned AI, it never came up in the interview thus far, right? So these are why these questions are good in a direct sense. They're also good in an indirect sense because they show that you're tuned in. You come across as somebody who's on the ball and is, has thought ahead about this role and this company and is interested in those things. And that also gives you points. You could ask what types of candidates, are generally successful in this role or in this company, right? You could ask them that, and then they reveal more of what they're looking for. They say, the people that really get on around here are people that are very, very extrovert, or they have a real obsession about the technical details, or they're great collaborators, or whatever, right? And that also then gives you a chance to slip in, that, oh, I do that really well, or whatever, right? You get insight into the role, you get to make a stronger case for yourself. Okay, so asking them what types of people tend to succeed in the role, in the company, or, according to you guys in this industry going forward, as you see it, what types of candidates tend to succeed in this environment? And you see what they say. Different people have different predictions about what's going to be needed in the future. Let's see what you guys think. right? And whatever they say, you might want to put in a good word and advocate for yourself and say, oh, well, I have that, you know? Another question or type of question that would be good is to say, now, this is a bit more of an advanced question, but to say, is there anything that you've seen in other candidates that you haven't yet seen in me that I could perhaps speak to, right? Now, I know there's some people that say that you shouldn't ask this type of question. I think that's crap. The caveat is that you have to ask it in the right way. Okay, you don't want to draw attention to weaknesses that you might have shown, but if you phrase it like I just did, or something similar where you're not drawing attention to weaknesses, it's not about weaknesses. It's about just, have I not mentioned something yet that, is important to you, right? This is another way of probing them for that, right? And then whatever they say, you then have an opportunity to address that and say, oh, yeah, you're right, that hasn't come up yet. I haven't mentioned that I have this accomplishment, or, that, I have this experience or this skill or this training that I took. So yeah, that's not going to be a problem for me, just so you know. And if you want any more details, I'm happy to expand, something like that, right? So it's another opportunity to advocate for yourself at the end and surface more of the things that they're looking for that they perhaps didn't explicitly state anywhere, right? Okay. And then the last question you should always ask at any of these encounters, any type of job interview, is, where do we go from here? So we have an idea of what the next step in the process is, right? Because what normally happens is people leave a job interview at the end and, they shake hands or whatever and, smiles and pleasantries. And then you walk out of there not knowing, okay, am I going to hear from these people? Are they making a decision anytime soon? Or is it going to be a week or 3 weeks or 2 months before they make a call on filling this position? Is it an open-ended thing, or what's the deal? Should I call them and check back, right? Things like this. So it's always good to ask that as a blanket thing whenever you're leaving a meeting, including a job interview. So where do we go from here? Like, what's the next step? Okay. So any or all of these are good. It might be kind of long if you asked all of these, but any of these are really good. You could just pick up any two that you remember, ask those. And then the third one will be, where do we go from here? That would be what I recommend. You do that, you're doing fine for the question, do you have any questions for us? And there you go. So hopefully that makes sense to everybody.